Call the meeting to order. Joyce, could we have a roll call?
We sure do. Amagashi?
Here.
Clary?
Here.
Gorman?
Here.
Maldonado? McKee? Is Brian here?
Here.
Oh. Mertens?
Here.
Shimming? Perry? Wofford?
Here.
We have a quorum.
Great, thank you. Approval of the August 26th, 2021 minutes. Do I have a motion to
So
approve?
moved.
Second.
Second. Did someone second or did someone,
Yes.
was that you, Joyce?
I said
Okay.
second. No,
Now
that
wait a
was
second.
me.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Public appearances for non-agenda items.
Nobody's here.
Okay, thank you. Next, fifth up on the agenda is the Oshkosh Housing Initiatives. Right, so we have a presentation today by the Oshkosh Housing Initiatives.
Actually, we do. We have Mark Lyons with us. Hi, Mark.
Hello.
How are
Hi,
you
Mark,
today?
welcome to the Housing Task Force, Fitchburg Housing Task Force.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
So I'm just going to give a little background, Mark, while you get your slides ready. Probably 2 or 3 years ago, Mike and Mark and another gentleman from Menasha did a presentation at the Yellers Conference on programs that they had put together utilizing the increment from TID. And so Mark is going to walk through some of the programs that they put together utilizing TID.
Yeah, thank you. So my name is Mark Lyons. I'm the Planning Services Manager for the City of Oshkosh. We started our Healthy Neighborhoods Initiative a number of years ago, and it's doing exactly that. When the TID law allowed us to capture the increment for one additional year, the City of Oshkosh decided to use that money to create what we call the Healthy Initiatives. So H&I is what we typically go by. Obviously, a nice thing is, that money is relatively flexible in how you can spend it. It has to be affordable housing with no more than 30% of your gross monthly income as applied to the programs. So it's nice because we can kind of move programs around as we see fit, as we learn more about what our community needs. I'm going to go over the programs that we're currently operating through our Healthy Neighborhoods Initiative with you tonight, and just kind of talk about the background of what we've done so far. So a little bit kind of to back up and talk about funding history. So in 2013 is when we closed our first TIDs and put some money into our Healthy Neighborhoods Initiative. So we closed TID 6 and 8 in 2013 for about $800,000 to $900,000. 2014 is when we had another TID closure, and TID 9 added about $1 million. And then 2018 is kind of what we consider our big windfall amount, where we had almost $4 million. Now, one thing I want to note is since 2018, the City of Oshkosh really changed its philosophy on TIDs. We no longer do large area-wide TIDs that generated these huge potential increment dollars into our housing programs. We've went to parcel and project-specific TIDs. So now money we have it coming in is substantially less. So we're trying to be cognizant of the kind of the nest egg we had in our programming, understanding that we're never going to get another, $4 million influx. And you can kind of see that in 2020, where we had two of our newer TIDs close, $12,000, $6,000, obviously substantial less than those initial TID closures we had. So we have to keep that in the back of our mind as we do programming in Oshkosh, knowing that we're not going to have those large chunks of money coming in. Obviously, there's a state law potential change out there that we're looking at going up to 3 years instead of 1 year for housing initiatives. But up to this point, that is not passed.
I have a question of process. Are we doing a Q&A at the end, Joyce? Or are we doing it as we go, or what's the?
I think Mark would appreciate if we wait till the end.
Great, thank you.
So one of the things we do try to tie a lot of our programming to neighborhood associations, and the city of Oshkosh has really taken an active role in trying to achieve more recognized neighborhood associations. 5 years ago, we had about 13 recognized neighborhoods. Now we're up to 20 recognized neighborhoods, with one more potentially coming on either yet this year or in January here. For example, Bentwood's here on the north side of downtown is one of our newer ones just this year. So we have kind of what we call 5 long-standing programs. These programs were established in about 2015 as we started to get that money coming in. Those are our Sold on Oshkosh program, Curb Appeal, Owner Occupied, Rental Rehabilitation, and Curb Appeal Micro Grant. And I'll go over a little bit more about those programs, but those are kind of the first 5 programs that we developed as a city. In 2020, we added 3 new programs. Those were Historic Rehabilitation, Code Compliance programs, and what we call New Homes in Our Neighborhood program. And then I'll talk a little bit about those at the end. So starting with kind of our long-standing programs, the first I have here is what we call as our Sold on Oshkosh program. It's your typical down payment assistance for anyone that is eligible within our program guidelines, which is the no more than 30% of their monthly gross income on their mortgage within one of our neighborhoods. We do give up to a $5,000 grant with 1 year forgivable per year they're in their home. So if they live in that home up to 5 years, they are fully forgiven of that down payment assistance. And one thing to note on this is the city of Oshkosh is presently finishing up a comprehensive housing study that we had done. And one of the recommendations in that study is actually for us to raise the $5,000 to a higher amount. We're looking at potentially $10,000 with $2,000 forgiven per year. This is our most popular program as of to date. We have some nice brochures and flyers that we put out there to kind of help people understand the information. And we do a lunch and learn annually, where we do go out to the public to advertise these programs. So just kind of looking at the numbers of how this program has been successful for us. 2016 was the first year of the program. We had a single project. And then you can kind of see each year the number of projects has grown. COVID did obviously slow that down a little bit here in 2021, as we have seen a little bit of tendency or kind of concern with people of buying some of the homes in our area. Oshkosh, we have a very old housing stock, a lot of post World War War and pre World War II homes in our area. So that housing market has slowed down a little bit here locally, but you can see, we've been averaging 10 plus, 15, 17, and it is an extremely popular program. We do also pair that with a community development block grant program of the same needs. That one goes up to $10,000. So sometimes we are, depending upon qualifications for an individual, right now able to get them up to $15,000. But we don't necessarily operate those programs together, but we can when necessary. The second is a curb appeal program, and that's what you would traditionally think. It's for the exterior of the home, landscaping, things of that nature to really gain curb appeal, improve the exterior look of a home. That is a 10-year, zero interest loan of up to $10,000 with quarterly payments. A lot of our programs we established early on when working with our market and the lenders in the area, that quarterly payments were the easiest for people to achieve. So a lot of our programs that are loan-based are all quarterly. That is something we found really works well in our community. Again, it is a deferred loan. So obviously if they sell the house within those 10 years, that loan is paid off in full. Otherwise they have the quarterly payments. A couple of the nuances of that program for eligibility. It is single family homes, condos, and duplexes, and it must be built prior to 1970. We are targeting, again, that older housing stock that we have in the city. They must be able to provide proof of ownership, and they must be up on all of their taxes and utility payments to the city. Just a couple of things that we typically see: siding, painting, windows, doors, driveways, landscaping are the type of projects we typically see with those. In terms of numbers, 2017, we have 2 projects. And then in 2018, 19, 20, and 21, we have had 1 project each year come in for our curb appeal project. So not a lot of success with that program, but people are taking advantage of it when appropriate. Next, we have our owner-occupied rehabilitation program. This is probably our second most popular program in the city. It is a 15-year, zero interest deferred loan with quarterly payments. Again, this one we do up to $30,000. So being the deferred, again, it is if someone sells the home within those 30 years, they do have to pay back the outstanding balance. But otherwise, it's a zero interest loan for 15 years. Again, it is eligible for single family homes, and again, built prior to 1970. And again, they must be up on their taxes and their utility payments. This one, we do a lot of still potentially exterior modifications with siding, roofing, windows, doors, if they exceed the 10,000 of the prior program. But then also we get into some interior things with, electric heating, plumbing, and in some interior improvements that may need to be made to a home. In terms of numbers, they have been kind of up and down throughout the years we've operated this program, with a maximum of 10 in 2019. 2020, we see a little less with 6 projects. This year, we only have 2 projects that are finished, but we do have several outstanding projects that'll probably end up being finished up early in 2021. That'll probably take us to about 7 for this year, but only 2 have been completed as of right now. Similar to the home rehabilitation program, we do operate a rental rehabilitation program. And this one's a little tricky. We can do income qualifications one of 2 ways. Either the tenants of the property can be income qualified, or the owner or rental agent of the property can be income qualified. We do allow them in both scenarios, but it is an income qualified program, again, where they can't spend more than that 30% of their gross monthly income on housing needs. Again, 15-year, zero interest loan with those quarterly payments up to $30,000. Similar to what I mentioned on our down payment assistance, this is another one that our housing study says we really need to potentially look up at raising from $30,000 to either at least $50,000 or $60,000. That in the rental market, especially if it's duplexes or triplexes, $30,000 really isn't enough to make an impact on improving that housing stock. And we need to potentially look at going to a higher dollar amount. Again, it is both interior and exterior improvements must be built prior to 1970. In terms of numbers of projects, we have not had a lot of success with this program. We have seen a couple projects, but only 3 since we started. So we have had some people take advantage of it, but this is a program we feel we probably need to look at a little closer and see if there's a way we can improve it to make it more desirable for our community. Next is our appeal micro grant. So this is a up to $500 matching grant for someone who is undertaking a project as part of our Rock the Block. Our Habitat for Humanities in the city of Oshkosh operates a Rock the Block program annually. There's a lot of projects that individuals in some of those neighborhoods want to do, but they don't qualify for Rock the Block. So if they're willing to make an investment in paint, landscaping, siding, something, the city is giving up to a $500 matching grant for that program to help them with projects that maybe don't qualify for Rock the Block, but they still kind of want to be part of the neighborhood and making improvements. So here you can see some of the project. This was a siding project from the micro grant that someone was going to do their siding anyways. So we were at least able to contribute a little bit of money towards that project. It's not a lot, but at least it's something. We're always a little cognizant of grant money, knowing that eventually we're going to run out of H&I funds. So we try to do more loans than grants. And grants, we really try to be cognizant of how much we're giving out. I said, just knowing we're never going to get repayments on those things. Just another example, this one I believe was actually paint. Looks like new siding, but they just painted the entire structure. Historic rehabilitation. So this is a new program. We're actually yet to have anyone take advantage of it, but this is similar to some other programs looking at doing a zero interest deferred loan. if someone in a historic property is looking to make historically sensitive improvements to the property, up to $25,000. It does require matching funds from the individual, but we are looking at pushing that program out. We've had a couple of interested parties, but they haven't decided to do the work up to this point. And that program is really designed just because we know it's cost prohibitive a lot of times to do historically sensitive rehabilitation. So just trying to find a way to fill the gap if somebody is willing to undertake the historically sensitive nature of that work. Excuse me. Code compliance. So this was a program that was established to help people who wanted to make improvements to their home, but just lacked the ability to do so. And these are really intended for life safety, structural deficiencies. So if they have a current violation from our inspections division for they need a new roof because there's a hole in the roof, or they need new siding because the siding's falling out and there's this hole in the side of their house, and they've gone to court, they've been found in violation of our property maintenance code, and they say, Judge, I would love to fix this. I just can't. I don't have the means to do it. This program is established to try to help those individuals out with a zero interest deferred loan to do the work needed to fix that up and help stabilize the neighborhood. One of the differences with this program, some of our other programs, we do allow them to be up to 1 year behind in back taxes and still qualify for this program. So as I said, this was a new program. One piece of this that's also different is we do match block grant funds with this. So the city sets aside $50,000 in block grant funding and $50,000 in H&I funding for this specific program. And we kind of use whichever pool of money works best based on the individual situation. Sometimes it's block grant funded, sometimes it's H&I funded. We had one project in 2020, and we have 3 projects that were successfully done here in 2021. So this is one that we feel really is helping target issues within the city that people want to fix and can't, and been relatively successful so far. I know the numbers are pretty low with only 1 in 3, but for a new program, we feel it's actually been relatively successful. And I think we have like 6 or 7 applications already in for next year that we're going through and establishing which projects will qualify. Last, so under the TID law, you can use a 25% of your actual funds on non-LMI projects. So this is a program that is falling under the non-LMI portion of our H&I funds. And I call it a proof of concept program to sell to our city council a way to help with infill housing. We know long-term this won't be done under our H&I initiative, but the program gives us the flexibility to start it there and then hopefully move it into another funding source for our city. But this is up to a $15,000 grant on a city-owned parcel. So all of these sites were previously dilapidated houses that were typically blighted and removed with block grant or other city funding and now sit vacant. We know infill housing costs can be higher than typical, suburban type dwellings. So the city's looking at putting together some funding, $15,000, to help incentivize that infill housing. We've helped stabilize the neighborhood by removing the dilapidated structure, but now we want to further stabilize that neighborhood by introducing a new home in it and really start to garner that organic rebuilding of neighborhoods. So it is targeting single family owner occupied structures, and we're providing the grant once the building is completed. They've been issued a certificate of occupancy, and it meets all compliance codes for driveway paving, grass being in for the yard, all of those things. Once they are done, we will give them directly $15,000. We prefer income qualified individuals, but like I said, this one does not have to be. If a homeowner is willing to reinvest in a neighborhood and build it, we are not tying this to income qualifications. And we have had one successful year in 2021, and we have a number of inquiries on city-owned properties for next year. This program really was established because for the last 10 or so years, the city was actively removing those dilapidated houses and having very little success selling those properties back for redevelopment of new homes. So just trying to incentivize that infill development. We do have all of this information available on our website. So I think I did provide Joyce kind of a printout of this PowerPoint. So if you do want to look at any of the programs closer and take a look at the brochures or anything like that, we do have them available online. That is everything I have. I'm happy to answer any questions I can.
Thank you, Mark. Thank you so much. You guys are doing a really amazing job with your TID financing. Great. Yeah. What an incredible, broad array of programming that you have. So thank you for that presentation. Folks, should we turn it over to, let's turn it over to the committee task force to see if there are any questions. Can we take it off of, unless
Yes.
we need to review the slides, can we take it off of the slide? Thank you. Yeah. Do we have any questions of Mark, folks? I'm not sure who's raising their hand, but I see a hand raised in the council chambers.
This is Marshall. So I have a question on the rental rehab program where you're.
Yep.
Okay. Where you're having the owner or the rental person being income qualified. So if you say have a duplex or a triplex and you're the owner and you live in the building but don't income qualify and your residents do, are you still eligible for the funds?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Godwin?
Similar question. This is with regards to the to the historic rehabilitation. You've still not decided an amount yet. Are you with me? Okay. Yep. Have you guys decided what the amount will be? 1, 2, on your historic rehabilitation, are the funds directed to individuals, or can a commercial entity also benefit from it?
Yep. So in terms of funding, we will provide a 1-to-1 match up to $25,000.
Okay.
And we will
so
provide
individual or to commercial.
Individuals only. We are targeting homes with these, so they do need to be homes. And we'll actually go up to $50,000 as a 2-to-1 match. So if they're spending $100,000 on a rehab, we'll provide up to $50,000.
That's interesting.
That one's another kind of pilot program that if it becomes very successful, we might move out of the TID funding and into another funding source through the city. Like I said, historically sensitive rehab can be extremely expensive.
One last part of my question, Mark. What's the relationship between you and the developers in Oshkosh? What do you do to make them want to stay in the neighborhood? And tell me a little about how you relate with developers.
Yeah, I would say we have a pretty good relationship with local developers. We're starting to see more and more outside developers come into the city of Oshkosh. And it is because we are, especially when it comes to housing, we are willing to use TID funding and create new TID districts to help with housing initiatives in the city, whether that be LMI housing or even kind of the affordable market rate side of things, maybe not true LMI, but if they're looking at doing workforce housing, we're relatively willing to do TID financing to help them. We know housing is a challenge, so anyone willing to help undertake that challenge in our community, we're willing to go for WIDA grants, provide TID financing when we can, anything we can do as a municipality to help with those projects.
What is the city of Oshkosh? How much do you charge for people who are developers? Because I know some developers shy away from certain communities because the cost of doing business is slightly high. What do you put yourself in the category? Top, mid, low?
I would say we're on the lower end.
Okay.
We do charge for TID creations,
Mm-hmm.
and it's based on the amount they're asking for. 1% up to $10,000 is our TID fee for going through the process of creating a TID. And it's because we do use Ellers to help with performer reviews. Our council is willing to entertain creation of TIDs, but they want to see the metrics that it's needed. So we do a lot of performance analysis using Ellers and Associates to help with that. On the municipal fee side, our fees are very low. Going through, for example, a rezoning process is $475. So our local fees we keep as low as we can, just to help with incentivize that. One thing we also do to help encourage development in our community, and I don't know if Fitchburg has done that, is we have approval for our inspections division to do all plan review locally. So when someone is building our community, they don't have to go to the state, wait 6, 12 weeks, whatever the time frame at that time is. They can go directly through locally, and our plan review turnaround is about a week. So we can cut time out of the process for developers, which a lot of times they found pretty helpful.
So you said 1%?
1% up to $10,000 maximum. So 1% of whatever their TID ask is.
And how does that compare to Fitchburg? Do you have a sense of that, Mike or Joyce? Like what is Fitchburg charging developers for TID?
For TID, we have a $10,000 deposit that they put up front when we run the pro forma analysis for Ellers.
So pretty much the same thing.
Yeah, for an individual project.
Okay, that's good to know.
Individual as in single family? Or no?
Individual as in project. If there's a
Project.
specific request for a TIF assistance for a project, they need to put down the $10,000 analysis. Right. And then if we do not utilize the full $10,000, that is, I'd say it's only $7,500 because it's an easier project for whatever reason with the analysis, then they would get that balance back, the $2,500.
Gotcha. Godwin, have you asked all your questions or yeah? You're done. Anybody else have any questions? Mallory?
So I noticed that the rental rehab program doesn't include anything larger than a duplex. Was there a particular thought process behind that?
So the thought process that I guess that slide's a lot outdated. We have allowed up to triplexes now. The original intent of the program was not for, multi-family structures, maybe a 8-unit building. It is something we've tossed around the idea of looking at financing and helping those larger projects. Our hesitancy in doing that is we'd have to significantly raise the scope, maybe up to $100,000 or $200,000 to make it worthwhile for those larger projects to ask for the money. And then it's going to eat up our available money a lot faster.
Mm-hmm.
I'm calling on myself. So I noticed that, so you had TIDs, you're gaining TID increments quite significantly over the last few years. And now all of a sudden you're doing it on a project basis. So the money's almost kind of going away. Mm-hmm. What's the thinking behind that? And I mean, I'm not going away, obviously, because there's some repayment,
Yep.
Parts of this.
Yeah. The first piece of it is just a philosophical decision by the city to no longer engage in area-wide TIDs because of the inherent risk to the city. Where project specific, we only do PAYGO TIDs. And being project specific, we're really shifting the risk from the municipality to the developer. Prove your project works, do what you say you're going to do, and we'll provide the TIF assistance to you. We had a situation a number of years ago, 6 or 7 years ago now at this point, where in one of our industrial areas, we had an area-wide TID that was done for really one project, but an area-wide TID was done at the time. That project was successful and did what it needed to do. Other industrial projects in the area lost value at that same time frame. So the end value of the TID was lower than the starting value, but not because of the TID financing project that it was intended for. So the city lost money because of the other projects. So that was part of the reasoning the city chose to go to more of what we call micro TIDs and shift that risk onto the developer and off of the city. The downside of it is that we are receiving obviously less funds for programs of this nature. We knew it was coming, and we saw kind of our balance sheet going down, and we're looking at repayments starting to come in a little more to hopefully program income start to offset that less direct payments coming out of the TIDs. A lot of our H&I financing we know is a finite funding source. At some point down the line, it may be 5 years, it may be 10 years, we're only likely going to have our program income to sustain, and we're going to have to scale back our programming at that time. Right now, we annually program about $500,000 to $600,000. We are not getting anywhere close to that amount in repayments, and we probably won't. So we may have to start to scale back some of our programming, and that's why we use a lot of this as I keep saying, proof of concept. If we can do good things for housing in our community, we're hoping that we can convince our council to general levy dollar it down the line. So if we can sustain some of these programs for 10, 15 years, show that positive impact, when that funding starts to run out, the goal is to go to council and say, you know, we'd like you to consider borrowing annually to keep these programs going in the city. Obviously, if the state law changes and the TIF allowance goes from a 1-year extension to 3-year extension, which we're really hoping it does, that will provide us a little more longevity in some of the programs.
Okay. Great. Thank you.
Olivia, it's Joyce.
Yes.
Hi,
Joyce.
I have a few questions for Mark.
Yep. Yep.
For evidence, do you require bids or anything like that, Mark? So when an applicant comes, do you require them to have, like, say, 3 bids for putting siding on, or how does that work?
Correct. We require 3 bids, and we do require certain insurance requirements for the contractors, which can, and especially when you talk like rental rehab, some of the reasons those numbers are lower in rental rehabs is some of the contractors landlords want to use don't want to follow our insurance requirements. And also sometimes they just don't want to be able to eligible for, we have to do an inspection of it. We have a housing specialist who goes in, looks, verifies the work that needs to be done. On the rental side of it, some of those landlords just don't want him in their house, which is why we see lower numbers on the rental rehab side. But we do require 3 bids, and we do then go through them with our housing specialists to make sure they're reasonable bids. Luckily, our housing specialist has been with the city for a number of years, and it's kind of built up a pool of contractors that if we have people that are interested, he can give them his pool of contractors that we know do decent work at a decent rate and meet our insurance requirements, and they can go through them for bids. But we do allow anyone that's willing to bid on a project and go through our insurance requirements to qualify.
Mark, how do you define?
Hold on, Godwin. I think
sorry.
I think Joyce has some follow-up questions.
Oh, go ahead, Joyce, please. My apologies.
I do, Mark. So once you have an applicant, do you have like a loan review or grant committee, or how do you determine who's going to be funded?
Yep. So first thing we do is the income qualification checks. We do that with staff. We do a credit check on them, make sure everything they've provided us does check out. But then we do have a loan committee. It's made up of members of the city as well as then some of our nonprofits with AdvoCap, Housing Authority. I think those are the 2 main ones. But yeah, we have a loan committee. I believe there's 7 individuals that sit on it that do approve projects.
Joyce, you have another one?
Yeah, my last question is, how many people do you think it takes to implement your programs as far as staff time?
So we have essentially, I'm going to say 2.5 people working on it. But we do this in conjunction with our block grant programming. So our housing specialist works on our H&I programming and our block grant programming. We have a housing planner that does H&I programming and block grant programming. So because there's so many crossovers between those two programs, they're full-time staff that are dealing with both those programs. Then we do have one part-time secretarial staff that works just for our H&I housing programs. So we're trying to kind of use that duplication of knowledge between block grant and other housing to make the programs work.
Godwin, thank you.
Very simple. Mark, how would you define the relationship between you and your community and the developers, etc.?
I think we have a very good relationship right now with our local developers, and our community is more and more engaging in housing needs. So we did a housing needs assessment just recently, and we were amazed at the amount of responses and participation we got from the public in it. We have some housing challenges coming. I think as a lot of communities in this state, housing and affordable housing is becoming an increasingly problem. And we need to find ways to address it. And luckily, I think, our council wants to get it done and our community wants to see us work towards it. So right now, everyone's kind of moving in the same direction. You never know what'll happen with your next council. But, right now we have a lot of support, both internally and externally in our community.
Okay, that's good to know.
Anybody else? Are you using, so do you have a summary, a summary of how many, units you've rehabbed and down payment assistance and all of that over the last?
I don't, but I can get that for you. I can send it to Joyce.
That would be great. Be good to see a summary. I can't remember right now what you said the most popular program is, or
yeah,
where.
Most popular by far is our down payment assistance.
And obviously this is an incredible array of programming. How did you decide? There are a lot of programs. Have you prioritized these, or how did the city council come to?
So a lot of it was looking at the needs of the community at the time these programs were established, and modifying them as we went. And we've changed and removed programs throughout time. And I'm sorry, the lighting in my home office here is very weird.
It's okay.
Every year in January, myself and the community development director sit down and look at all of our programming to determine, are we meeting the needs of our community, or do we need to come up with something new? That's why in 2020, we added new programs. We felt that we were missing certain elements of it. The nice thing about TID financing for these is it's really flexible. There's not a lot of strings attached from the state. It's no more than, you can spend 75% of the money must be on LMI, but they qualify LMI as just at 30% gross monthly income on housing. It's not as strict as block grant. So we have a little bit more flexibility to move it around and try to meet the needs we see in the community. And change the dollar amounts. Throughout time, we've upped some of our programs. We've dropped some of our programs. And we'll continue to do that. Every year we sit down, we take that look and say, are these having the desired need, or do we need to find a new way to do this? The one thing we have not done that we have been talking about is getting involved in large scale affordable
multifamily. Right.
We had a request last year for $250,000 for an old school conversion into senior LMI housing. We chose to go through the block grant program to provide funding for that because it was a little bit too big of a chunk of change that we wanted to fund through H&I. We're seeing an increased need that these programs are great. They help individual properties for the most part, but they also are not having a huge impact on the community. We're not adding 70 new LMI units to a neighborhood or to the community. And just trying to determine if or when it's appropriate to make investment in some of those large scale multifamily affordable housing projects.
Right.
Other communities in Wisconsin have taken this similar dollars and done that and said, you know what,
Yep.
we're going to take the whole 700,000 we have and stick it into an LMI project to help fill the gap for that project.
Right.
We've tried to be a little more cognizant with the dollars and the fact that we want it to last. Doing something of that nature is kind of a one-time injection of dollars and then you're done. Doesn't mean we're not going to do it. We're still considering it. We like our programs, but we also want to make sure the end outcome in the community is we fulfill our affordable housing needs. And if that means we need to end these programs and start going to large projects, it's something we consider every year.
Right. Just last question. Are there any lessons learned that you want to share? Like, oh, we did that and that didn't work, or like, this was now I understand Fitchburg is not Oshkosh and Oshkosh is not Fitchburg, but I don't know, just in terms of.
I would say the biggest thing we've learned and my biggest takeaway from these is don't be afraid to try programs. If they don't work, they don't work. But don't be afraid to be inventive. Try something, see if it has the desired impact. If after a year, 2 years, it doesn't have your desired impact, stop that program and try something else.
Oh, sorry. That was my last question, but it's not. My last question is actually, do you have a racial equity and inclusion or racial disparity piece of this in your language of any of these programs, or how you?
Written into our documentation, we don't. We do have a DEI committee that reviewed our programs and helped us go through them and make sure that we are trying to be as equitable as we can. We try to limit it to looking at the numbers. If you qualify, we will give you the money, period. So we take out as much objectivity. If you spend less than the 30% and you qualify for the program, we will not deny an application. Our goal is to get that money into the community as long as you meet that 30% threshold as set by the state.
Any other questions? Mike, Joyce, Brian, Marcia? Okay. Mark, thank you so much for coming to our task force. Great presentation, learned a lot, very helpful. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for having me. If you do think of other questions, Joyce has my email. I'm happy to answer and share any information I can with you.
Great. Thank you so much.
Have a good evening.
Good evening.
Olivia?
Yes.
I didn't have a question for Mark, but I just wanted to kind of help with some of the context as far as having him share the programs from Oshkosh today. As you know, over the last year, we focused on the rent-to-own program and developing that with H&A Associates. In the 2022 budget, we have the next phase of that analysis, which will be looking at site-specific areas to potentially do a project, okay? And the two areas that we probably will focus on are Fish Hatchery Road, North Fish Hatchery Road, and then also possibly over in Terravessa. So there might be kind of a redevelopment infill option that we look at, and then maybe a greenfield option in Terravessa. But then one of the reasons we had Mark, we wanted to have them share their portfolio of programs because we really learned a lot when we listened to him at the Eller seminar a couple years back. And granted, they've got CDBG too, and I think Home Funds is a tool which we don't. We're relying on TIF for affordable housing, right now. But as you remember from our housing plan that was completed in 2019 or adopted in 2019, so we're focused on the rent-to-own, which is a ownership strategy to kind of meet that missing middle, potentially a pilot program, as Mark said. Let's try it, see if it works and functions the way that we think it's going to, and maybe it becomes a model for us. But we also wanted to hear from him because, you know, one of our other priorities in the housing plan was to look at kind of rehabilitation there and to start thinking about that and having the committee to start to think about that because, you know, we've got that older multifamily housing stock that was all built, especially on North Fish Hatchery Road, approximately all the same age, the same type, lacks the modern amenities and things like that. But then we also have the smaller mom and pop. They might be the 12 or 24 units over in the Belmar area, some of the 4 units and 8 units over there in the Jamestown off of King James Way. So we just wanted to start to get the group thinking about, you know, that's another track that we want to go on to, and, you know, what types of programs would we be looking at? Obviously, we need to have a lot more conversation, bring forward information probably from our planning department and also our building inspection, Jack Pearson as well. But that, I just wanted to give you some of the context of why we thought it was helpful to hear from Mark, because they've got a really good portfolio where they're focused on ownership, but also kind of rental and some of the rehabilitation. And the reason we bring that up is just an update for you on our TID for housing increment timing and process here. I'm hearing from administration and our finance director that TID number 6, which is our big one over at Orchard Point where the Super Target store is, right now we're projecting that we will look to close that TID in 2022. So what that means is, and part of the reason that we're possibly able to do that, and it's not for sure yet, but the TID is very successful. That TID's done a lot of heavy lifting for us, including paying for Spoke and Sprocket, paying for the Nesbitt Road roundabout, Fitchburg Road. But what the strategy here of why we can accelerate it is we're hoping to close the TID in 2022, but as part of that closure, and this is a unique strategy that our finance directors learned from other communities, we would prepay the year of housing increment. So we can do the prepay of the housing increment and close it in the same year.
Wow.
Okay, so the timing of that is the council needs to do a resolution in the first quarter of probably March of 2022. We would officially close it in, I think it's April. We need to go through then the audit period for TID 6. And so I just checked with Misty tonight, and the housing funds then could start to become available in fall of 2022. Okay, so I'm just trying to give you some scope from a timing standpoint and everything.
Okay.
And this is just an approximate number, but the approximate number that we're probably talking about from TID number 6, that would be the TID for housing increment there, would be in the range of about $2.67 million. Okay, so that would start to be our first significant, capital that would become available.
Well, now 75% of, is that the 75% of the TID?
That's
or is
the
that
total amount. That's a total
Okay.
amount, yeah.
And presumably, we're gonna use the total, but that's not a decision that's been made. Godwin, did you have a question?
A simple question to director here. What are we doing for the ensuing amalgamation with Madison, the town of Madison? Are we thinking, are they part of the process that we're looking at, Mark, for some of the things you were talking about?
Yeah.
I don't know whether we have a TID district in that area, but if we're doing anything, you got a lot of single-family homes and old homes, so to speak, that we need to. Somehow, I've not heard anything. Maybe I'm behind time of what we hope to do when and if this happens, which is next year.
Yeah, I think that remains to be determined, Godwin. There is a TID district.
Okay.
There is a TID district over there right now that's on track to close in 2020, I think it's 5, over there with our current commitments to the Alexander Company through, that was a town-created TID. okay? So it was created under the town of Madison. So what we've talked about with city administration here is we want to remain on the path to close that TID, okay? Get that all, rolled into the city of Fitchburg, and then we are very open to creating new TID districts over there. And one of the reasons for that is the town business model for how they approach TIDs is a lot different than Fitchburg's business
I
model.
think so.
Yeah,
Mhm.
and so we want to close that one out, clean the books and everything, and then we've already expressed to Alexander Company and others that we would definitely be open to creating new TIDs based on Fitchburg's business model going forward. So Godwin, that is on our radar screen, because I want to say
Okay. That's good.
there's less than, how many single-family homes over there, Joyce, do you remember? Sorry, it's less than 100, and I think it's even less than that, because 95% of the housing stock that's coming to Fitchburg in the Southdale neighborhood is multifamily rental. But
Yes.
there again.
Which is older,
To
isn't
all
it?
of what, that's correct too, yeah.
Yeah, so that's why that starting to have a conversation and focus on, rental rehabilitation is important not only for existing Fitchburg, but, future Fitchburg as far as the Southdale neighborhood. So that's why we want to start, again, we've done the single family, we're going down that track as one of our objectives from the housing plan. But that rental rehabilitation is one that we really think and was identified in our housing plan as a priority. And with the housing stock that we have and the housing stock that's coming from the town, we think that we really need to start a conversation, start to give some serious consideration to what types of programs would we develop in with that focus area. So just going back to my 2.67 number there of the TID 6, if you remember with the H&A rent-to-own program, I think they had estimated that there would be about a $2 million participation from our TID for housing increment for that program, remember? Granted, now that would be replenished as, those units are hopefully eventually going from rental to ownership and acquisition there. But that's kind of one of our immediate priorities, out there with the program that we've developed, and it's going to go to that next phase in 2022. Then I just want to add so you can kind of anticipate what's on the horizon here. So TID 6 hopefully close and housing increment in 2022 fall. And then TID 4 is our next big one. That's the one over here with the Promega campus, the Fitchburg Tech campus, and extends over to Highway 14. That one again did a lot of heavy lifting with the helping to pay for the Highway 14 US or Lacey Road US Highway 14 interchange. That one hopefully will close by about 2024, possibly 2023, but again, that's not for sure yet. And when that one closes, we're probably looking at TID for housing increment in the range of about $5 million that would go into our TID for housing increment fund. So as we're thinking about programs, I just wanted to kind of give you, we obviously, we only have so much capacity and we can't do everything all at once, but it kind of gives you some ideas and even some timing of when resources and capital might be available for some of the priorities. And as you know, from working with H&A and Joyce and I in the last year, it took us probably over a year to even come up with the rent-to-own housing parameters, as we're developing our programs. So, hopefully in 2022, we can start the conversation and strategies on also looking at rental rehabilitation while we also work with Mike and Steve on the more site-specific, rent-to-own, there. So just wanted to put that out there for you for food for thought for the committee and kind of update you on the latest as far as what I'm hearing with TID 4 and TID 6. One last thing I will say, based on Mark's comment, where they shifted from going with larger tax increment districts to kind of smaller, more strategic ones. I've already had the conversation with our city administrator, Chad Brecklin, that once we close, especially TID 4 and TID 6, because right now we are over the 12% equalized value, so we cannot create new TID districts at this point in time. We need to get below that threshold, so once we close TID 6, we'll be hopefully below it once we get the new values from DOR with all of our districts. definitely when we close TID 4, we'll have plenty of capacity. But then we maybe want to look at some smaller, more strategic, targeted TID districts, you know, that are focused on some specific areas there. What happened with TID 4 and TID 6 was each one was unique, that they were both very successful with their smaller geographic areas, but then we had some infrastructure priorities like getting out front of the Verona Road project and paying for Spoke and Sprocket. And but for us paying for that through the TID district, we wouldn't have had that reliever road in prior to more of the major reconstruction of Verona Road. So we amended that one, extended it, and did that. And then back when we had the last Great Recession, we amended TID 4 and did the US Highway 14 Lacey Road interchange as kind of our local stimulus and to make that land more development ready over there. So normally we don't like to go that big and where we're amending them and keeping them open longer, but there were some specific infrastructure needs of why we did those two at that time.
Does anybody have any comments or questions about what Mike said? Mike, thank you for that very thorough and extensive overview background regarding future use of TIF funding for affordable housing. That's excellent. Obviously, you know, really taking the direction of what was put in the housing plan, you know, already, having to balance the needs between single family rehab, and the new the rent to own program that's been in the works for a year now. Mike, Joyce, what do you expect from us, or is there a role that we can play in terms of, you know, I don't want to say that everything's already defined yet, but it sounds like kind of, you know, like, you know, here's what we're doing with the rent to own, and then there's maybe 67.67 million and another 600,000 that might be for rehab. Is there a, you know, will there be a designation of the areas that you want to target that? Is there a role for the housing task force to help define what that potential programming or, you know, RFPs would look like, or is there not, what do you need from us?
So absolutely, Olivia, and that's why we tapped into this group from the very beginning, because you are our housing experts, and we're going to be looking to you to actually help provide some guidance. And so I'm just going to I'll give you a little bit of background on number 7.
Okay.
So I didn't get a chance to chat with you about this, but this is something that I did a little bit of research and just looked around at different communities to see what type of programs that they have. And I put them in your packet for you to look at, along with kind of our recommendations from the housing plan. And what I was hoping that you would take some time to kind of look at the recommendations from the housing plan, and maybe what we need to do is have everybody prioritize what they think the needs of Fitchburg are. You know, we're hearing that, yes, we need to come up with some type of a rental rehab program for our older housing stock, our multifamily. So maybe that is one of the priorities that we want to look at. So I thought I would just share with you some different programs that I found. And I found some kind of neat, interesting ones too that we maybe haven't even thought about. One being, I believe Milwaukee has an emergency housing fund, where if your furnace goes out and you don't have the funds to fix it right away, maybe we give you a low interest loan. I mean, there's a lot of neat, different, creative programs out there. So I just gave you a bit of a sampling of some of the things that I found. And now we're going to look to you to help guide us in coming up with some ideas.
And Joyce, can you follow up with that presentation? Can you let us know, because you have a long list of examples here. Which one did you find would be quite suited for what you've done your research on with Fitchburg? I'd love to hear your viewpoint from what you've done research with.
So I didn't want to prioritize. I really think this is a point where we're going to tap to you for your expertise. I know what I'm hearing from the public that Mike and I work with, but I'd like for you to actually kind of give us some input from what you're hearing too. Mallory and I just had a conversation earlier today about some things Gary's doing, and she made some mentions of some thoughts of what she believes we should be doing with some of our funding. So it would be really helpful for Mike and I if you just took some time and kind of looked through the programs and maybe had a list of the things that you think we should really prioritize on, and maybe develop some programming.
There's, so, you know, the list is huge, and Oshkosh is a great example of so many different types of programming. And, you know, how would we, I mean, we could all sort of give our individual input, but then we'd want to make some sort of a recommendation that came from the housing task force that seemed like might, you know, be a consensus or the most informed. So I guess, we don't have a process for that yet, but right. So Joyce is asking us to look at all the suggestions that she put forward, and then maybe the next meeting we would maybe sort of prioritize. I'm not sure what the process for that, bringing those ideas or, you know, our preferences forward, but I feel I really, you know, to jump on Jennifer's comments, you know, facade improvement, you know, I don't know, certainly eviction prevention or, you know, emergency rental assistance is a great one considering our, you know, the COVID situation we have. And and since there's such an emphasis with single family, that I would think that rental rehab, but it seems to me that, you know, you would know best where the rental rehab would be targeted, if there would be a targeted area where you'd like to.
I'll chime in on that one. I think Oshkosh's model, where they're focused on some of their healthy neighborhood, you know, we've got 3 already priority neighborhoods identified through our Healthy Neighborhoods Initiative.
Right.
You know, that's North Fish Hatchery Road, that's Belmar, and that's Jamestown. And then as
Right.
Godwin pointed out, we'll be adding a 4th with the Southdale neighborhood as it's coming forward and becomes officially part of Fitchburg in October 2022. So I think, you know, that's where it would be my suggestion that we align our program focus areas to that Healthy Neighborhoods initiative, just because that's where, you know, the older housing stock is and probably the greatest need, you know, is too.
Right, absolutely.
Yeah, and it just seemed like aligning our city objectives across some departments and initiatives makes a lot of sense, you know, that way.
Right. And then also you get some of the racial equity and inclusion, which is, you know, sort of the huge county priority, because of focusing on those more high needs neighborhoods, I think. And I don't know if that, I mean, I'm assuming, you know, there's some of that priority for the city of Fitchburg to racial equity and inclusion. How can we, you know, reduce the disparities?
Yeah, I think that's already kind of one of the guiding principles in our Healthy
Right.
Neighborhoods initiatives.
Right.
You know, that's in there.
Right.
And as far as the priorities, Olivia, one of the things that we wanted to do is, and this was based on conversations between CETA and the Housing Committee, and how do you establish priorities working with our city council. We have a meeting scheduled for Tuesday, January 11th. It's going to be an internal meeting with our city administrator, city attorney, Joyce and I, and our finance director. And what we're going to do is we're going to go through the ordinances and statutes for respective committees. We talked to City Administrator Brecklin, and he said, let's start there first to find out how is it structured right now. And then we want to, once we have the internal conversation, we're going to bring in the committee chairs and the alders from the Housing Advisory Committee and CETA to determine then how should that process work in practice on working with this group on identifying priorities that are not only priorities for this group, but then they're identified as priorities for the council. Because that's the gap that's missing right now, that we need as staff people here. So we just, you know, the Housing Committee's only been in place for 2 years. And, you know, we kind of structured it. And now, you know, we kind of have some experience, and we realize we've got some gaps of, you know, more process and how do we identify priorities, through kind of the city administration here. So that meeting will take place on January 11th, and then out of that one, hopefully there will be a follow-up meeting shortly thereafter to include the committee chairs and alders to sort that out so we can figure out a better way of how we're working in practice to.
That's excellent. That's so,
Okay.
that's so excellent. And obviously, working, having read the Healthy Neighborhoods Initiative that you guys have, what better way to align, resources and funding, and, you've already established some priorities, so we don't need to reinvent the wheel. I am curious about Mallory, what ideas you had. You had said, Joyce said you had some ideas or talked about some creative ways for use of this funding or idea.
Well, and it was a very short conversation I had this morning as Gary's driving down the driveway, but he informed me that they're doing affordable single-family homes in the city of Oregon. And that there's the property that's adjacent to that is owned by the city of Fitchburg. So I'm trying to figure out where that property is because I didn't get all the details and what affordable means as well. But my guess is it's near I think the Alpine Dairy, that old Alpine Dairy area.
Mm-hmm.
So I wanted to get some more information from him as to what is being promoted for that particular and what affordable single family housing means to Gorman and Company and how affordable that really is. So I told Joyce I'd get the details and I looked in my inbox and there was nothing today. So I'm hoping to get some more information here soon.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Awesome. Thank you. Very exciting. Joyce, did you just want to say something?
I guess I engage you to look at these things that I presented, but if you are bored on some evening and it's cold and rainy or snowing and you're stuck inside, maybe you want to look and see if you might know of a community that has something creative. I'm sure Brian's probably going to go out to our 3 healthy neighborhoods and do a drive-by and say, oh, I think I can see some, tired properties here that could use some rehab. And he might come back with a different list than Marshall does. So,
right. I can imagine that be the case. Yeah.
It'll be interesting to see. And, Jennifer's in the real estate business as well. So we've got a lot of great minds here. So we're really excited for you to kind of take this project. Plus, I did this agenda item when Mike was gone, so, he didn't really know what I was up to, but I was, we just need to start thinking and moving things forward. So that's why you have some homework.
Well, it's so great that this is actually happening now. It's finally happening. We've been talking about it for a while, but I was thinking that too, doing a drive-by, going to the Healthy Neighborhoods spots or whatever. But I do remember that you do have some larger, older multifamily developments that are in need of some rehab. But I think that that maybe not be able to, it might be more than $600,000 to redevelop some of those larger, older multifamily. But I do remember that being an issue in some of your neighborhoods, healthy neighborhoods, actually.
I think one of the other things that we'd like to have a conversation about specifically with some of those larger, older multifamily apartment complexes is the best strategy to look at rehabilitation, or is the better strategy to look at a lot more expensive option, but redevelopment? And is there a scenario where we could work on some master plans with some people that have those sites and say, because they actually have fairly large land areas, they're kind of inefficient as far as the utilization of the land up there. So is there any kind of scenario that we could piece together the economics to drive a project that, let's say, currently has 2-story, double-loaded hallway, buildings there, and let's say because one of our goals obviously is we want to make sure that we can keep the people that currently live in the neighborhood, that they're not forced out of the neighborhood from an affordability standpoint. But is there a way to do a project where, let's say we build a brand new 4-story affordable building, working with WIDA in conjunction with TIF and other funding sources, and then the existing residents of 2 of the 2-story buildings, move into the new, or have the opportunity to move in to the new 4-story building that has the modern amenities. It's got the fire safety sprinkler systems, which we like here in Fitchburg and everything. And then, we move the folks into that building, and then we knock down the 2 existing 2-story 50 to 60-year-old buildings and maybe do another one there. Because in some of these areas, until we address some of that housing stock really long-term, because if it's already 50 to 60 years old, imagine what it's going to look like in another 30 years. And it doesn't have the modern amenities, and everything. It's serving the purpose of being affordable workforce housing just by its age, and it's evolved to that. But how do we upgrade that housing stock, but still, again, make it affordable so we don't displace the residents that currently live there, too?
That's a huge
Yeah.
question, because we all know that the WIDA projects, the tax credit projects, are, serve low to moderate income folks, but they actually are, they're probably going to be more expensive than what they might be paying there now, because anyway, displacement is a huge question in this, because anyway, so but that whole process about redevelopment of those areas, maybe that is really almost separate from this, isn't it? Because if it's a WIDA,
it's a bigger picture
tax credit
conversation, and it's also bringing in the private sector partners, the people that currently own the properties, and maybe looking at like a collaborative planning process, with them to figure out a strategy and a vision that not only works for the city, but also works for them on the private sector side, because there's the whole financing and underwriting that they have, on the private sector side. But we're really going to need to have some of those conversations, because some of these neighborhoods, we're not really going to really be able to transform unless we go with a bigger picture, and again, a lot more expensive, option.
well, and maybe this requires a master plan or something that has neighborhood buy-in, and I mean, if you're going to upgrade the neighborhood, or at least have maybe have multiple phases of upgrading some of these neighborhoods or improvement, maybe you could use funding from the TIF to maybe do a master plan in one of these areas for affordable housing, or that would include affordable housing.
One thing with TID number 10, which is the one on North Fish Hatchery Road, and I'm sorry, I'm probably going off the agenda here, but a few updates for you there. TID 10, remember when we've started that one, it was like, if we build it, we hope they come, and that we'll have enough valuation to pay for the Fish Hatchery Road reconstruction. And with the Oshala project that will now come east of UW Credit Union between Fish Hatchery Road and Index Road, another $30+ million project. There's $1 million TIF ask to extend Oshala out to Index Road. But our financial analysis from Ehlers and Associates shows us that that will generate enough new valuation to allow us to pay for that TID request of $1 million, and it will also make us whole and allow us to cash flow the Fish Hatchery Road reconstruction without another project happening up on North Fish Hatchery Road, just if we get Oshala in the ground. So the TID projection would be, the maximum life of the TID is 2044. With the Oshala project, we could close it, or would cash flow at 2039 for it. And again, that's without any other projects coming. So good news for everybody that, we will be able to finance the reconstruction of Fish Hatchery Road going forward. So one of the things, Olivia, to piggyback on what you were just talking about, there is potentially another project that is going to start to surface at the Plan Commission this month. It would be directly across from the Highline affordable senior apartments on the west side of Fish Hatchery Road that Plusco did a WIDA tax credit project. They are proposing on the north side of Traceway Drive, this would be to the west of the Fitchburg Ridge Shopping Center there, that triangular piece, a 183 unit market rate building there, and 150, I think it was, if I got the numbers right, kind of garden style apartments, and then it would be wrapped with about 30 townhome units with individual entrances out to the street. It's a very, very attractive project there. And what we like about it is it starts to bring some market rate housing on the west side of the road. So as we look to kind of, increase the trade ring demographics there, we view that very positively. That would be immediately east of where we would east of where we would locate our hub neighborhood center or project, there. That parcel is in the TID district. So if we would put another 30 million in the ground in the TID district, the discussions we've been having internally is that is going to bring us some more resources. So maybe that could be the source of, we take 100,000 from some increment that generates to do a larger kind of neighborhood redevelopment plan to exactly what we were talking about with some of these other larger apartment complexes up there to kind of do some analysis and visioning and strategizing.
It does seem like, it does seem like, and I don't know what the timing of that 100 grand that you're talking about earmarking for the planning, but it does seem like with all of this money coming in and out of, Fitchburg's pockets and all these different plans, it seems like having a map, doing some planning, right? Doing some map planning about different areas. And I mean, Mike, you've got this all in your head and we don't, but it would be really, it'd be nice to see a plan and have some community input and really, get some stakeholder engagement and support and yeah.
So we'll keep you posted as these things move forward and as we can kind of align them with initiatives for this group. And again, once we have that prioritization conversation with the elected officials and committee chairs in kind of January, February.
Yeah, that 100K that you talked about, maybe generating that from that, I don't remember which development you just talked about. You just talked a lot about a lot of developments. When does that money seem to be available?
Oh, at the earliest, they wouldn't probably start construction until, maybe the fall of 2022. As far as they've got to go through the approval process yet. They're using Plan Development District zoning. They'll be on the December Plan Commission meeting for just the first step of the PDD process, which is the pre-application meeting.
Right, but you said something about that TID generating money for a plan. Right? Didn't you?
But
say,
it would be from. What I would envision would be from this project in particular. So it would probably be 2024, maybe once the project's in the ground and we've got the valuation and it's generating increment.
So we wouldn't be doing a master plan or a plan around?
Probably not until,
funds.
Yeah, and some of it too is.
Because what you're saying is Fitchburg has a priority of using these funds for, rehab now and, later date, it would be more wise to have more comprehensive when there was more money to use.
And it's all based on when can we generate the valuation and increment, too. Mm-hmm. So we'll keep you posted on that as we make progress on some of these things, but they're on our radar screen.
Right.
That's good to know. That's very good to know. Thank you.
Any more questions for, we have our homework, folks, looking at these different programs and priorities and what we think. We want to come back and kind of provide our individual and maybe collective, I'm not really sure, but how we do that the next time we meet. Funding programs and discussion and homework. Okay, so is everyone clear what, Godwin?
I thought the briefing that we received a few minutes ago about the new city administrator trying to have a meeting, etc.
Yeah,
it's something that we should really be happy about, because I think with him coming in, I think this is a good opportunity for us to know what he wants and for him to know what he wants. Whether you like it or not, our next major meeting will be, the next quarter. That being the case, I think it would be really nice if staff will continue to just give us tidbits from time to time, so that when and if this committee meets with him, we have a common goal that all of us, striving for. Don't forget, we got created as a committee. Some of the issues we've had have been, gee, what do they expect or want from us? I think with a new person at the helm, this really is a good opportunity for us to make sure that we're all singing out of the same hymnal. So I'm really, happy to hear that from staff. And again, briefing us, in my opinion, is such an essential part of how successful we will be because, we might have ideas and those ideas might be wild ideas, but if we know where we want to go, then it makes it much, much easier for us to get there.
So one other thing,
Excellent. Well, yeah. Joyce.
I'll send out a link again tomorrow to the housing plan. If anybody just kind of wants to brush up on, some of the things, the items in there. I pulled out, the slide from the presentation that we did to you when we first met of some of the recommendations. And as we, heard from Mark, things change. And so we constantly need to look at, that information that's in there. Is it still relevant today? Or what do we need to look at and to move things forward? So I don't want you guys to get frustrated by this committee because we have done a lot of really, really good work. It may not seem like it, but the things that you guys have done and the guidance that you provided us we really appreciate it. I think without this group, we probably wouldn't be moving that rent-to-own project forward. So, since it's a time of giving thanks, I thank you all for, the time that you've given us and your support, because it does help us in, moving things forward. So if it doesn't seem like it, we're doing good things. So thank you.
Oh, yeah, no, you guys are doing a tremendous amount of work, Mike and Joyce, and in terms of facilitating this, helping with the housing task force, but, implementing the housing plan. There's a lot of boxes that have been checked on the housing plan because of you guys. So I feel like we've had a lot of progress. Obviously we're a housing task force, we're an advisory, we're not making decisions. We're not the city council, although we do have city council people here. Do we have any city council people here tonight? No. But yeah. So I feel like we've made, personally, I feel like, there's been a lot of progress made since the housing plan came out in 2019, not too long ago. So I feel like huge progress, and you guys have been doing an amazing job shepherding that. So thank you from us to you. Thank you so much for all the work that you guys are doing. And you're really, I see a lot of perspectives in the county, and you guys are, Fitchburg is doing a lot of innovative thinking. And, there's only one other community right now, other than the city of Madison, there's only one other community right now who's actually thinking about, working on, program criteria for their although Oregon is doing it too. Anyway, this is what, several municipalities are doing right now, trying to figure out how to program their TIF closure funding for affordable housing. So it's great to be part of this discussion, and thank you for everything that you guys are doing.
And Olivia, can I just provide one other, and sorry I'm talking a lot tonight, but just an overview of affordable housing projects that have happened within probably the last 4 years here, because sometimes we're always focused on what's the next project there, and we don't always step back and say, okay, what has happened there? So just here's a summary for you. In the Southdale neighborhood that Godwin had mentioned earlier, the Novation Affordable Senior Housing Development opened up over there, okay?
When did that open?
Yeah, it's probably 4 years ago that one first opened. So that's affordable senior. Last year, Artisan Village open. That's the 167 unit affordable workforce housing over there. So again, part of our strategy and one of the reasons we were supportive of those projects, and Brian Schimming was a big help through WIDA at that point in time, was to bring new housing stock and affordable housing stock to that neighborhood, because we all know that the existing housing stock is aged over there. Then, and part of the reason I want to mention the senior housing developments, you might remember from the housing plan that they estimated Fitchburg needed 600 new senior housing units over a period of time. Okay, so we've got 60 affordable at the Novation campus. We've got the Limerick, which is under construction at Sain Road and Lacey Road. That North Point development, and Sean O'Brien, who used to be at WIDA, is spearheading. That has 100 affordable senior units and 26 affordable all-age townhome units for families over there.
What's the address? I've looked at this. I've looked at Limerick, and I know you got funding from the Affordable Housing Development. What's the address of Limerick? I haven't seen the.
We'll have to find the address for that one and see if.
It's fine. It's fine.
Yeah, I can get you that. Then remember, we've got the 160 unit Highline Senior Apartments on Fish Hatchery Road, just north of the golf course. That's again a TIF deal and a WIDA tax credit, and that's 160 senior there. Then
and when was that done?
That opened last year. Yep.
2020?
Yeah. Then we have Limestone Ridge. Now I'm shifting gears over by Super Target there, behind Hy-Vee. This is the project behind Hy-Vee. That's 124 units of workforce affordable housing. And that's being done by J.T. Klein.
Right.
And as you can see, the pattern here with all of these projects is it's not Fitchburg developed housing, it's a public-private partnership, usually involving WIDA and some other toolkit programs, but private sector developers working with the municipality there. Then this one is not a affordable one, but again, it adds to our portfolio of senior housing behind Super Target. And I kind of call it it's called the Quarry Ridge Resort Lifestyle Community. This is the higher end, probably the upper 5 or 10% of the population. I kind of liken it to the cruise ship style of housing, where everything's included, your meals, your housing, dancing, music, all kinds of stuff over there. But it serves, again, a segment of the population, and there's a need for that. Then we will have 2 more senior developments coming that will add, again, to our continuum of senior housing in Fitchburg. One is in Terra Vesa. That's on the east side of Highway MM. And it's the Riversong development that Marquardt Development is bringing to us and to Terra Vesa. That will have 128 senior apartments and then 60 assisted living units, because we really haven't had any new assisted living housing in Fitchburg for a number of years as far as new construction. And then the last one with senior housing is we're working on lots 53 and 54 on the west side of McKee Farms Park. This is an infill development there. And we're working with Andev Development, and they would be doing, and I don't have the numbers in my head here, but it's a combination of assisted living and memory care. And again, we need additional inventory of that product to not only meet the needs of our Fitchburg population and residents that are aging, but a lot of times you have families and professionals that are living here that are bringing their parents to be close to them and are maybe looking for, places within, because they live in Fitchburg, in close proximity, to where they live. So that still is coming forward to the Plan Commission in December for their kind of final step in their plan development district process with the specific implementation plan. But so far, it's getting support and should be moving forward. So some really good, projects there as far as the senior housing. Again, we're bringing a whole variety of product there that kind of meets some of that 600 unit need that was identified in the housing plan. So I just wanted to kind of give you a summary of that, because sometimes when we step back, it's like, oh, wow, we didn't realize we had this much going on, not only in the affordable housing, both for family and senior, but then also in that senior housing portfolio of housing that meets various people's needs. I'll out there.
You know,
So- so like-
I hate to ask, but it would be so nice just to see this in like a slide or 2 slides, you
Yeah,
know,
yeah.
just so we can have some context. I know some of these were in the Fitchburg plan because they were already built, or yeah, I think so.
Yep, some of them are
and then-
open and, you know, occupied already.
Right. But it would be so nice if, yeah, you could put these in a couple of slides just so, yeah, when we're thinking, because you asked us to do some homework and we're like, okay, what do we need? What do we don't need? And all, you know, I don't know. And there might be other things that you want to tell us about. So yeah.
That's
But
why I thought I
just
would
wanna-
mention those as you're thinking about
Excellent,
the
excellent,
priorities
excellent, thank
of
you.
things that have already kind of been done or are in construction. So as you're identifying your priorities, you have that context too.
Right. And the last Quarry Ridge, River Song, McKee Farms, those are all market rate, right?
I'm sorry, Olivia, what was that?
The Quarry Ridge, the River Song, and the McKee Farms are all market rate senior housing, right?
Yes.
Or not?
Yeah.
Okay. Godwin?
Just out of curiosity, Mike, what are we doing in terms of providing commercial space? Even though you've got senior housing, people might want to go out and shop from time to time. Are we factoring all of that in all these new neighborhoods that we're trying to develop?
Sure. In Terra Vesta, actually, this is that Smart Code neighborhood where this Riversong development is going to be constructed by Marquardt Development. They've got their first couple of mixed-use buildings that are coming forward that will have commercial space on the first floor, you know, and then residential units above. One of the first things over there is, you know, the Postal Service has moved now to kind of a central mailbox system in new neighborhoods and everything. So that's one of those buildings that's going to kind of house their kind of postal hub, you know, for that neighborhood and everything over there. So those approvals are handled administratively because it's through Smart Code there. As long as you kind of check the boxes on the development parameters, a lot of that is handled administratively by staff. So we'll start to see those come forward. Up on North Fish Hatchery Road with the 2 guys that were working with their Fitchburg residents, their company is called Adventure Capital. They are the ones that did the Terrace Point juice plant redevelopment there. And that one opened up, you know, 100% leased with the apartment units up there. But they have about, I think it's 8,000 or 9,000 square feet of commercial space on both the north and the south ends of that building. They don't have any specific tenants yet. They thought they had one that was going to be more of like a coffee shop kind of operation, but then that didn't materialize. So that space is still available. And then in the new building that they're bringing forward off of Oshala Drive to the east of UW Credit Union, that one would have approximately 10,000 square feet of commercial space, and then it's going to have 170 market rate apartments. So we're trying to bring opportunities for commercial space, you know, in these various mixed-use developments. Then I think the other area that we're looking at, as you might have remembered on the Shea property, the across from Super Target there, about 2 years ago, we were working with Myers, was going to be the anchor of driving a comprehensive development plan for that 30-some acres west of Fitcherona Road and north of McKee. Myers pulled out both of the Fitchburg project and the Sun Prairie project and decided not to go forward with those when they took them to their committee. But I know that Bob Shea is engaged in some conversations with 2 potential development interested parties there. We as a city have met with both of them, and that's probably all I can kind of share at this point in time. But I think that would drive some additional mixed-use development on the north side of McKee Road across from Super Target. So that is on our radar screen, Godwin. You know, I think the one segment that we're kind of wondering where is it going to go post-pandemic is the office, you know, market there. We're just not sure where that's going to land as people work hybrid or, you know, work remote and things like that. And as leases come up for renewal, you know, what's going to be the demand in that space? And that's a little more iffy at this point.
And I just want to clarify, we're on agenda item number 8, report from department.
Yeah.
I just got someone asked me that in the chat box. So just want to.
Thanks, Olivia.
Yep, sure, we kind of jumped to, got
Yeah.
right in there and
Yep.
report from department, yep.
So, then I will just mention one of the, in segments of the economy right now that we are getting inquiries for are science and technology companies. We still get inquiries for that space. And then warehouse distribution is another sector that, as we all order our products online and want delivery either the same day or the next day, they're kind of going from their mega hubs in like Beloit and, Pleasant Prairie and everything to now wanting to have, maybe a 20 to 100,000 square foot warehouse, more in closer proximity so they can accommodate those delivery needs that we all have, out there. That's a harder space for us to operate in because we don't necessarily have some of the land available for the building footprints to accommodate that. So that's more something that CETA will be talking about, working with the city council and with the planning department.
That's a great, yeah, go ahead, Dom. You're good, okay, thank you.
Olivia?
Yeah, I mean, yes,
Oh.
Joyce.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you, but since I have everybody here, a while back, Olivia and I talked about possibly having a tour of some of our affordable housing projects. Is that something that this group would be interested in, just to see that the type of housing quality and some of the amenities? So maybe we had talked at one time about going to Artisan Village and maybe meeting there and then just having a tour afterwards. I don't know if that people feel like that's a good use of their time or not, but I'd like to just put it out there again.
Well, I kind of like the idea, I'm not a Fitchburg resident, and I would love to at least do a windshield tour of, maybe the projects for the last 3 or 4 years, or we could actually go into Artisan Village, which would be great. And we could do this between meetings, pick a day, an afternoon, an hour or two. I personally would like that, but I could just also go by myself if people are not interested. I could, take the addresses and drive do the windshield survey, myself. But what do folks think at all? Are they interested in doing a tour or a drive-by?
For me, it would be dependent on timing. So are you looking for before the season, before the holiday season, end of year? So when are you guys looking to do this?
Just at some point, Jennifer, we don't have to do it now. I mean, it's just something that Olivia and I had talked about, just to get people familiar with, what these projects look like, where they're at, that type of thing.
Well, and make us more informed, committee members in terms of, you're taught, I mean, I do have a sense of Fitchburg, it's not like I don't know, the areas that we're talking about, but it does feel like it would be contextual. I would like to do this, Joyce, and if it ends up just being you and me, that's fine. But and maybe it's just a list of addresses, and then we pick one place to go to, and maybe we don't do it this winter, or we could try it this winter, and not don't do it if there's a snowstorm. But yeah, Godwin.
I think it's something we should put in place for our next meeting, in the next quarterly meeting or beginning of spring. So that's a good time to do that. Just ask anybody who's interested in coming along, so we know how many people are coming up. But I don't think this is a good time to do that. I think it's something we should be doing in March, April.
How do you guys feel about doing it in place of actually us meeting? Because I think you do have some homework for us for this next meeting. Mike, Joyce?
Well, I think we should have the next meeting, in March, because we not only need, we've got homework, but I think we also will be probably already starting to work with H&A on the work plan for 2022. So we probably need to have some focus of that meeting on that discussion if we've made any progress. But I think then the tour should maybe just be a separate one that we offer kind of in between the March and the next meeting there. And, as Godwin mentioned, let's wait till we know we're not going to have a snowstorm or anything like that. So if we're going to organize it, it can kind of work for people's schedules. And the other reason to just hold off a little bit is, we'll probably have Limestone Ridge the workforce housing one finished and, hopefully starting to be occupied. So there might be a couple more that we could actually kind of stop at or, to tour at that point in time. So sometime between the March meeting and the next one, if we could do that as an extra meeting, we still would have to post it as an official meeting of the group, but that's totally fine as long as we, follow our protocols here.
That's the way to do it.
Great, excellent. Any more, any further report from the departments, from the department?
It's germane to this group, not directly, but we are in the process of recruiting and hopefully hiring our new city planner. I'm not sure if this group had heard, but our previous city planner, Sonia Kriesel, decided to go over to Vanderwall and Associates.
Wow.
For a great opportunity at Vanderwall. So that's a big loss for us, but great opportunity for her. And so we're in the recruitment. We had interviews last week, and I just got back to the office tonight. So I don't have an update yet from administration, but I was on the morning interview panel last week, and then all of the candidates did a presentation in the afternoon to a different panel that was there. So stay tuned for that, but that's an important recruitment for the city of Fitchburg.
Has Sonia actually left already?
Yes, she has.
Oh,
So
when did she leave?
Lisa McNabola, who worked in the planning department, is our interim city planner while we go through the recruitment process here. So just a heads up and an update on that. And once the recruitment is final, we can send out an update, or I'm sure you'll get an update kind of through the city social media and stuff like that.
Thank you very much.
Gotcha. Thank you for that update. It's too bad you lost Sonia.
Yeah, she was great.
I'm sure you, hopefully you've got a nice pool of qualified candidates, hopefully.
Well, and hopefully we'll get to still work with Sonia
Right.
as we work with Vanderwall on some things.
How long was Sonia with Fitchburg?
A little over 3 years, I think, about
Okay.
3.5.
Okay. Any other report out from the department?
That's all I got.
Okay. Oh, really? Gosh. All right. It's just sitting on your bum, huh? Okay. Announcements. Do we have any announcements?
No announcements. Other than our I sent out meeting dates to everyone already.
Okay, yeah.
So you should have them on your calendar. And Merry Christmas.
Right. I have an announcement. The RFP is going out the first week of January for the regional housing strategy. Dane County is doing a regional, an entire county-wide regional housing strategy, inviting all the municipalities and developers and, housing stakeholders to participate. Project will be kicking off in May, hopefully. So 8-10 month long process. But that RFP is going out in January. Yeah, beginning of January. Any other announcements from other committee members, task force members? No? Okay.
I like how you call it a task force.
Yeah, all right. Committee. Thank you. Happy holidays, Joyce and Mike. Thank you so much for all your great work. And committee members, thank you so much for being here, and a great meeting. Thank you. We'll do our homework. We'll look over, all the programming ideas for the affordable housing funding, and see you in March. January, February, March. Yes.
My thanks also to staff. They've been doing very well. Appreciate it.
Perfect.
Yeah.
So all we need is a motion.
Oh, I'm sorry. Motion.
So moved, Madam Chair.
Second.
Second.
Thank you. All in favor? Aye.
Okay,
Aye. Opposed?
Happy New
Okay.
Year. That's it. We'll see
Meeting
everybody.
adjourned.
Bye,
Thank
everybody.
you so much, everyone.